Well, good morning to everyone. This is a session about the city of Houston and its no zoning approach. This is going to be quite a remarkable session because you'll wonder two things. One, why CNU Latino in Houston? Well, Houston is 73% minority and immigrants and minorities, 73%, of which 45% of the entire population is Latino. So anything that happens in Houston has a tremendous effect on the Latino population. I moved with my wife Martina to Houston about 5 years ago, and I was really hesitant to go because it was not cool. We had formerly lived in cool places, and Houston was not in the slightest bit cool, which I had a very hard time. How would I admit to my friends I lived in a cool city? But this changed about 2 years ago, thanks in great part to the two people that are sitting right here today, and also to a book called Arbitrary Lines, which was Nolan Gray's manifesto against zoning codes, and being the nation of our nation is based in zoning. And the last chapter of that book is an ode to Houston, a romantic, just an incredible. When I read that, I was so proud to live in Houston, and I think that's one of the things that has turned Houston into the latest cool city. And you'll discover today a lot of what's been done, in great part thanks to the stewardship of Margaret Wallace Brown, who will introduce herself in a few minutes, tell us a little bit about herself. And she led the planning department for many, many years in Houston and introduced many of the types of changes and very innovative regulations that Houston was able to do precisely because it wasn't hamstrung by zoning. Her protege, Abraham Zorrilla, is a community outreach planner and has had a lot to do with the fact that many of these things have been able to be implemented in Houston. And then the man who needs no introduction, Andres, will conduct the interview.
Thank you. Fernando needs introduction. And Fernando is one of the most capable and agile people that I know. Whenever I need it done quickly, I say, Fernando, make sure it happens, or make sure you make me do it. And he's been around since forever in many different roles. And right now, he's leading the charge in the CNU Latino, which is taking form, and it's not yet, we don't know what its destiny is. But I do want to say one thing. What's happening in Latin America is full of DNA that we need in this country. It's right on the other side of the border. A lot of our future is there. And there are many, many things that are well handled and many things that are not, that are very badly handled in Latin America. And I would like to see that come through the CNU to affect, basically so that we understand what will be going on in this country. Now, this was Fernando's idea. And Margaret is an illustrious person. She's the head planner of one of the top cities, the fourth largest city in the country. She doesn't necessarily pick up a phone call, right? But she did, had several conversations that were fascinating, and I have notes, a lot of notes. And Abraham is a kind of éminence grise, as the French said. I'm not exactly sure what you do, but you might be like Fernando to me, you get things done. And so one of the things he got done are these notes about cool stuff that was spoken about, and it's amazingly unknown that what's going on in Houston. We are full of stereotypes about Texans. You know what Texas is like and what Houston is like and all that kind of thing. And yet here we get Margaret, who is not exactly a good old boy, who actually had one of the most powerful positions in a city like Houston, which is really all about development. They do oil and development. That's what they do. And so Margaret, what I wanted to do, rather than read your bio, if you could tell us about your journey, how you became who you are. She retired now. Look how young she still is. So she's done that, and it's interesting to see that. And then a little bit of your biography, self-introduce as a journey, okay? Right. And then we'll start with that, and I'll ask you some questions.
Hi, so my name's Margaret. I grew up in a number of places in the United States before I landed in Houston, just south of Houston, in Clear Lake City. And I studied architecture at the University of Houston, expecting to be an architect. And learned pretty quickly that I was one, not a great designer, and two, more interested in how buildings play together than how they looked, on themselves. And so I started my career in a development company in Houston and started getting interested in how does this development affect the street? How are we contributing to the community? And in 1986, when the price of oil went from $45 a barrel to $20 a barrel overnight, Houston went into this very deep depression, and I had an opportunity to go work for the city for a couple of years, which I thought would be a good learning experience. And so 37 years later, I retired last January from the city. And my passion has always been, how do buildings speak to each other? How do we build a community? What does community mean? And how do we build something that's lasting, not so much from the architectural design perspective, but from the streetscape perspective? And how do we make our rules encourage better development? Because many of us are focused, working in cities where our rules encourage the wrong things sometimes. And so how do we really be flexible enough in our rules so that we encourage the players to do the right thing? And that's what I've spent a career in the city trying to do. And now that's what I'm doing as an advocacy after leaving. So,
Margaret, but why did they hire us when there were so many good old boys they could have hired? Why you? Did you pitch this about the lovely relationship between buildings? Was there something else that allowed you to be successful?
well, I think one of the things that made me successful was that as I tell young folks in our office, curiosity is, I think, one of the greatest skill sets a planner can have. And I was always curious. I was asking questions about things that were not my responsibility. And so I started to learn things that weren't my responsibility. And I got involved in things. I asked to be part of projects. The city of Houston was working with the Parks Board to do our greenways. I asked, not even in my department, not anything to do with what I was supposed to be doing. I said, can I be part of this? Can I help work through this? And so just being able to know everything that's going on. Plus, I have this ability to walk into a meeting and listen to what's going on and then figure out, are we asking the right questions? Or wait a minute, what are we really trying to fix here? And so I kind of developed a fix-it attitude, and I think that spoke to the mayors, and that spoke to the folks who were making those decisions.
Right. So the mayors, you caused them no problems. The elected officials,
For a while.
you caused them no, because you can't cause problems, keep your job very long. And then the other thing is the developers trying to do it and playing. So that's a nice combination to be a long-term planner. Anything you want to add? Anything you want to biographical? Just especially for the women here. How do they get to the top? And Abraham, what's your journey?
Sure.
Hello everyone, my name is Abraham Sobringa. I'm originally from Peru. I moved to Houston again when I was 18 years old, and my bachelor's degree was in international business. So I was doing a lot of financial advising and managing for one Kenya. As long as I was living in Houston and I was seeing how the nurse was, I seen a lot of interaction between the community and the city. So since then, I've been working really closely with managing the minimum size government communities that is all community-based, basically. With that said, it was strong to get into the community and speak language. So we had to street people, have to get people to our meeting. And not only that, how I would be allowed to go to the meeting. And because of that, like I said, the planning department has a very strong relationship with several communities, especially the communities that historically have been underserved.
Okay, you two. This is where you hold the mic.
Yes.
Okay, actually, and at a distance. Like I'm doing. So just because you can hear it better.
Tell me for 1 minute.
Yeah,
You said,
go ahead.
Tell them a minute something.
Yeah.
I do want to say something. I'm
Go.
going to get on my soapbox for a moment. I've worked with a lot of young women who have great skills and who can run departments and run corporations. And for the young women in our department, I would often tell them two things. And I will say this to you, and I mean it with every bit of intensity. Don't ask to be invited to meetings. Invite yourself. Go to every single meeting, even if it's above your pay grade. Try to get into that meeting. They'll tell you if you can't, and that's okay. And you're told to leave a meeting because it's whatever it is, it may not be appropriate. But try to get into every meeting that you can. And the other thing is to stop saying I'm sorry. Really, I have had so many young women go up and say I'm sorry, but you can't. Just say you can't do that. I think we have a tendency to apologize for things we don't need to apologize for. So stop apologizing.
By the way, guys, stop apologizing also. Just encourage you to apologize. It's just wasting so much time. Okay, one thing that you added, I want to allude to. So much of what we think about Houston is counterintuitive. One of the lens, when I read this, one of the lens that I look at this through is possibly Houston, and tell me at the end whether it's true, is one of the most liberal, classically liberal cities in the United States, which is exactly what we don't think it is. For example, by the way, most of my knowledge comes from taxi drivers.
Okay.
So I've been in Houston for several reasons, and it is the most diverse city in the United States with the greatest range of immigrants in the United States. It isn't just from South America. It beats New York completely, it beats California completely. It is the most diverse city in the United States. Incredible, right? Is it true?
That's right. And not only that, you see that diversity in different communities.
Okay.
There are areas that are segregated, but the diversity is everywhere.
It's everywhere. Now, what that gives them is a huge number of parallel experiments on living that are taking place. You know, when you're in lockstep, you're running one experiment, i.e. Portland. This is what we do, and we do this, and we either thrive or we crash. But there's no plan B in Portland. There are lots of plan Bs there, right? There are people from certain countries that know how to renovate dead shopping centers. You know, they just do that, and et cetera, et cetera. It's really, really interesting with the resilience inherent in diversity. The other thing that's shocking, which I just read here, which is incredible. One of the things, I've worked in Houston, no developer has ever complained about the regulators in Houston. They can't stand the regulators in Austin. Okay, don't confuse them. And Austin is the most liberal city in Texas. I've never heard in 25 years of working there anybody complain. So one of the questions we asked is, what is the longest a plan right now? What is the longest a plan has ever been for getting a permit in Houston? 27 days. You know, it's like 20, I know a project in California that's 27 years when we started, and it's now 35 years. And when it's a single family house, the longest it's been there, you can imagine it's some kind of problem thing, is 13 days right now. Okay, just compare that to anywhere else on earth and just see what's happening there. And so as a consequence, they do not have a housing deficiency. And everywhere else is a shortage of housing, unless you're a city that has imploded. So it's just an amazing laboratory of doing things right. Is this?
Well, so yes, the 27 days is 27 days in the system. Now that we may have been working with that developer for a period before they actually applied for the permit. Then 27 days. We've got service level agreements with our customers that 75% of our residential single family development needs to be out within 10 days. And so 13 days is not terrific. But yeah, so we're a low tax, low service city. And I keep saying I'm having a little bit of trouble realizing that I'm not there anymore. So Houston is a low tax, low service. We don't provide a lot of services. We don't have a whole lot of regulatory overlays. We have, a limited regulatory environment that we work in. And so it's slightly easier for us to review your applications.
What about NIMBYs? What's the NIMBY situation?
So we do have NIMBYs, but let me step back for just a moment and kind of give you the framework a little bit. I know everybody hears that the city of Houston does not have a zoning code, and that is absolutely true. Our electorate has declined on 3 separate occasions to institute a zoning code for the city of Houston. What the city does instead of zoning, we regulate. Really, it's a non-map-based set of regulations that really addresses how something faces the street. What is the setback? What is the We don't really talk about density. We don't talk about FARs, except in very, very small instances. And we don't absolutely tell you what you can do, how you can use your property. But when you decide how you want to use your property, we will then tell you how far you need to be set back, how much parking you need to provide. And,
What about noxious uses?
so we do it, so nuisances, things that are declared nuisances do have different regulations. We don't allow cemeteries inside the city any longer. We make you fence, auto storage lots. We make you fence, you can't put a rain drain plant. So we do have nuisances that we deal with. But for the most part, development is, we don't deal with how you use your development. What we tell you is once you decide then how it can be built. We have historic overlays. We have 22 historic districts now, and they have a series of requirements. 3 of them actually do deal with FARs and lot coverage, but that is only within the historic fabric, in the historic district. And so, if you're on a major thoroughfare plan, you have to set back your property 25 feet. If you're on a local street, you can set back 10 or 15, depending on the circumstances. What we do have, to go back to the NIMBY's ideas, we do have a pretty extensive list of neighborhoods that have civic club deed restrictions. And so deed restrictions prevail. So if the deed restriction says you can't put a storage facility in this neighborhood, then you can't. The deed restriction.
Made with private developments. Houston is a series of private developments that may carry the
Yes.
deed restrictions.
Yeah, it's really hard in Texas to create deed restrictions if you don't already have them. The chances of you getting them, if it's not in greenfield development, is pretty slim. But greenfield, they're created all the time. All the new development that's going on, what's called the extraterritorial jurisdiction, is deed restricted, and that's kind of
Which are HOA rules, and by the way, I think, allow me to make a comment. One of them is, because I want to keep saying, to emphasize some of the more interesting things you're saying. So when Margaret said something very interesting, she said, we kind of tell you how the building meets the street, right? It's the first thing you said. People have asked me, if you were to write a 1-sentence code, what would be the most important? And I would say how the building meets the street on the first floor. So much comes from that. And just if you think about it, so much comes from that because that's what supports pedestrian activity. And that's exactly what she said. We care how the building meets the street, which you call the setback. Super smart right there. They got the main thing. The second thing is that there are that whatever zoning they have, and it is kind of like zoning, green restrictions, it's decentralized. So you actually have a choice. One of the things that you find is if you don't like the way this neighborhood is going, you can emigrate internally. You actually don't have to leave Houston. Okay, the way that some other cities, I can't stand this city because I can't get anything done and everybody's this way. There's no single answer in Houston. You just move to a different deed restricted area until you find your happiness. So it's a federation of zoning codes. Actually, it's a federation, and you can find your happiness in Houston without having to leave to go to the Mississippi or Portland. Which is, this great exchange that's going on now, you can actually do it within a city like Houston.
yeah.
It shows very different character.
No, I just also want to add that the city of Houston also have what is called minimal lot size ordinances that establish how small the lot can be based on the lot size character of the neighborhood. But not only that, they also establish single family land use restrictions for properties and lots that are vacant or single family when the application is submitted. It's all community based. Basically, the property owner needs to apply. The application can be with evidence to support that represents 51% of the area. So the bigger the lot, the bigger the support. Now, a single family definition in the city of Houston, chapter 42, which is the code ordinances that we use to regulate development in Houston. It is one unit house, a duplex, or a house with an ADU or garage apartment. So let's say that you have a business or commercial lot or multifamily lot within the minimal lot size ordinance. So you will have to follow the minimal lot size restriction. However, the land use restriction, the single family land use restriction will not apply to that lot. We have this ordinance since 1999. It has changed. Back in the day, it was only a minimal lot size restriction. In 2007, changed, or they included the land use restriction, single family land use restriction. And then while I'm working right now, and I mentioned with Margaret when she was the director of the planning department, is that we need to amend the ordinance in a way that it's some flexibility for properties in Bay of first. We have area application that can be up to 500 lots. And with that, people take advantage and they want to include some properties in Bay of first that are mixed use, some of them are commercial, some of them are single family. And with the density and changes that have been used to, we need to find probably some type of flexibility for those property owners. They don't want to see single family homes made of first.
There's a number I read here. They've reduced their minimum lot size to 1,400 square feet. Okay.
Yeah, so the history of how we got to what he's talking about is kind of important. So
You know, every other city is getting them bigger. Is making them bigger. You see the incredible difference with Houston. They've actually achieved 1,400 because it gives more choice. Right? Okay, go.
in the late 90s, it was really clear. So set the context a little bit. Houston is not hemmed in by any natural boundaries. And so the land just goes for days. And we are part of an area that includes 5 separate counties. Most of the city of Houston is in Harris County, but some of it is in Montgomery County, Fort Bend County. Montgomery County and Fort Bend County are the 2 fastest growing counties in America by percentage. But the vast majority of those counties are outside the city of Houston. And so in the 60s, the city of Houston was about 60% of the regional population. Today, the city is about 32% of the regional population. So the vast majority of the growth that's going on in the Houston area, when you read Houston's growing faster than any other part of America, what you're reading is the Houston region is growing faster than any other part of America. Mostly it's being fed by Montgomery County, Fort Bend County, and then Waller County is also growing. Harris County, which is the county that holds most of the city of Houston, actually lost population in the last census update. So you can see what's happening. Not a good thing.
Do schools have something to do with?
Schools have a lot to do with it. If you read anything about school districts, you know that Houston Independent School District, one of the, I think it's the 4th largest school district in America, is undergoing a great deal of turmoil right now. It's been taken over by the state of Texas. We have a superintendent that's been appointed by the state of Texas. And it is a mess, let me just say. And so families that can, it's the drive until you can afford to buy mentality. You've got a couple of young kids in your family, you want good schools for, and you're going to look into the surrounding area because also not only is that going to be cheaper for you, but the schools, you're going to perceive the schools to be better. Now, HISD has some tremendous schools in it, but they don't get the publicity and the aid that some of the more struggling.
So there are different school districts, city and county.
There's 22 different school districts within the city of Houston.
May I just intersperse a success story? Miami does not spread this way at all. Miami doesn't spread this way. One of the miracles of Miami, we have a unified school district.
Yeah.
People do not move to the suburbs because of schools. They may make other choices, but you actually see a lot of people coming in, as many coming in as going out, and the schools never determine it. And I think a unified school district, is one of the most important buttons that we can have because I see it in my city.
Yeah,
So-
Texas has an independent school districts, and the school districts report to the state, not to any cities. There's only one city in Texas that has a unified, that has a combined, and it's in Houston's suburbs. But so you move out to county because you think it's a cheaper home, you think it's a better school district, and it's a 5,000 square foot lot for your growing family. What happens though is that you're now spending a fortune on automobile. You've got to have a car for every kid that's going to high school because they can't walk to their high schools. You've got to, because they can't go to their part-time jobs. You're spending a fortune on transportation. So when you look at that H+T index that many cities are looking at now, the housing plus transportation costs, while the cost of housing may be lower in our suburban areas, often the H+T index is beyond affordability. And it's not something you realize until after you're out. But so in the mid-90s, we were seeing that Houston's single-family residential development that took place in Houston was 1 in 4 for every single-family residential unit built in our suburbs. And the powers that be, and I was in the planning department at the time, thought, well, we need to stem this tide. We need to figure out how to not do this. And so we lowered the minimum lot size to 1,400 square feet. But the NIMBYs, you asked about NIMBYs, the NIMBYs raised a lot of objections about that. So what we did was we phased it in. It was 1,400 square feet inside the inner loop first, and then a year later it was inside the outer loop, and then it was the whole city. And what that did was that gave the communities time to get their act together and to do this minimum lot size ordinance that Abraham was talking about, because it is an opt-in. The neighborhoods have to decide to do it. And so theoretically, what we were allowing was, okay, so if we're going to reduce the lot sizes to 1,400 across the board, here's your chance to say, I don't want my neighborhood to do this. And so that's really the genesis. So in a way, Houston's always tried to play both sides of the fence.
Okay, there's a technicality here that's very, very interesting. Notice they didn't raise the density, which creates apartments. They lowered the lot size, which actually continues to be single family houses. There are tons of disadvantages to living in a cooperative, living with a card, or living with neighbors that can make joint decisions. When you go to Houston, and think of Frank View, one of the best developers I've ever met. When you go to Houston, you see a phenomenon that you see only in the oldest cities in Europe, et cetera, which is the 4 and 5 story townhouse. In the rest of the world, it's a 2-story townhouse.
Yeah, you're seeing pictures of it.
Oh, there it is.
I actually think those are Frank Blue developments, actually.
So here we go. Okay, so these, and by the way, all types are modernist, et cetera. They're superb inside. The second floor is much higher, et cetera. Do you see the difference? You raise density, you're in an apartment, you have an elevator, you get all that problem, your car is parked somewhere else. You lower the lot size, you're still in your own home. And I think that was something in fact, I wasn't aware of that till about 2 minutes ago, of what you were talking about. But this is something you don't see. Maybe you see this in San Francisco. You don't see this in America, the 4-story. And I think that's something in our toolkit we need to introduce. Rather than just say, raise the number, keep people happy in their single family houses. And I think that this side setbacks are 3 feet or 2 feet or something?
Probably 3 feet.
It's just 3 feet. It constantly increases now. Now we have 6-foot setbacks. Every time you turn around, they increase it. Okay, what is it? 10-foot side setbacks now.
Yeah.
We have things creeping in that extraneous specialists insert that actually prevent this kind of thing. I think they protect this. There's something about Houston that actually said, don't change it if you don't have to. The incidence of injury and death is not higher with a 3-foot setback. So do you see how everything's related here? You kept your 3-foot setback, you lowered the lot. That is really neat, technically.
So in the year that we did that, in-city, single-family residential development apartments went up 45%. So we saw an immediate change in what we were doing. But then over the years, what we've seen is that these lots, particularly inside of loop, continue to come to raise in value. And so we continue. So while we don't have an affordability crisis in Houston, we have an affordability problem. We really do. And because you can move out in the suburbs, now we've got a housing out problem to some extent. And so trying to navigate both of those.
Yeah, but the suburbs are densifying and becoming mixed use at a really, really fast rate.
Yeah.
You go out, sometimes I'm destined to spend a night in this hotel in the suburbs, and there's always a really good town center not too far. Well, at least I make good choices. But it is not what you think. There are very cool places out in the suburbs also, including, by the way, a huge number of restaurants being tested there. I think if you come from this kind of desiccated American suburbia, the desiccated, I am really bored, I'm tired of Golden Corral food, this kind of stuff. You go to Houston, and it's not at all like that. There's tons of good restaurants. That's where they pioneer the new concepts of retail. The new concepts of retail, the future cool things are actually tested in Houston. So there's a lot of that stuff going on that makes it much more exciting to be excited.
Yeah, I think the city should do a better job promoting Houston as a culinary destination. people in Texas should come to Houston to eat because the food is a very authentic, very delicious. You can find restaurants everywhere in the world. But just to finish about my minimum lot size, the minimum lot size has been for 40 years. We cannot have any ordinance that seems like a zoning regulation. So it needs to have a deadline. There is a renewal process that occurs, but I just wanted to share that with you. And also there is a recent ordinance, meaning that after 5 years an application was approved, the community can apply to rescind the ordinance if they think that it's time for the community or the lot size to change.
But I want to throw a little bit of a monkey wrench into this concept that it's all, blue skies and rainbows in Houston, because even though these suburban developments are terrific, they're usually well done. They do usually have town centers in them. They're done. Greenfield development can be good, and in many instances it is. What happens is, though, it's not helping the city of Houston. That greenfield development is not increasing the city of Houston's tax base, which is what, as a previous city employee, my job was to figure out how to increase, how to maintain the tax base and or increase it. So it really was incumbent on our department to figure out, well, again, people say 1 million people are going to move to the Houston area in the next 10 years. How do we make sure as many of those people as possible move to Houston and inside the city? And so 3 years ago, we embarked on what we call the Livable Places Initiative, where we were trying to create better ways, again, improve the development regulations that we have, the limited regulations that we can play with, improve them so that we can, again, try to encourage more infill development. We created the city's first courtyard development, no maximum density, no minimum lot size. I keep looking at the pictures to see if there's something.
You are forgetting the alleys, though, I heard. You
Yeah.
can have alleys, and they're actually allowing them to be closed.
We give up our alleys on occasion, which was something that when I was director and the public works director and I were simpatico on, we got to stop doing this. If you own both sides of an alley, and maybe if you own the corner and both sides of an alley, we would often allow you we would sell you back the alley. Bad idea. We should never have done that, because when, we need to use alleys as a transportation infrastructure that they really are. We have about 90 plus miles of alleys inside the city of Houston, but only 19 miles of alleys are maintained by the city of Houston. And so typically the residents on either side of the alley maintain them. But we created courtyard development. We increased the ability for somebody to build 4plexes up to 8plexes on a neighborhood street. We increased the size of accessory dwelling units from 1,500 to 1,800. And this is where, some of the NIMBY question comes back, is that we thought, because the definition of single family in Houston is 2 units. If they're attached, there's no maximum size for either one of them. If they're detached, the secondary unit can only be 900 square feet. So we asked the question, why 900? Where did that come from? And nobody really knew. And so why would there be a limit at all? And we proposed an unlimited secondary unit. And the neighborhoods came back and said, no, you're not going to accept that. We don't want 5,000 square foot ADUs. Even if it's within the setbacks, even if it's within the size of the lot. And they said, no, we don't. So
you're telling me that single family in Houston is always 2 units?
It could be.
If a lot is designated as a single family lot, the definition of
You
single
realize how rational this is?
has been since the 90s.
This is when all of this stuff is like Portland aspires. In heaven, Portland went to heaven, they would have this planning earth and the Houston code. It's absolutely mirror world. What you see is mirror world. And we're looking Portland. Well, what about Houston? Why isn't, and by the way, we haven't even gotten homeless.
Yeah.
To the homeless non-problem. Okay. So, we're focusing on fixing things when we actually have a place that's fixed. And I think that I'm learning with you. Okay, with the rest of you, I'm actually more amazed than I thought it would be. I think that this should be one of our poster child cities instead of Austin.
So one of the things that we didn't do right is our transportation We still have a car-centered transportation system. We still, I'm kind of, well, then you can see it in this picture. These, not the one on the far right, but the other ones down the street, you'll see all take access from the street. It is a 30-foot wide driveway. It is 6 feet worth of sidewalk and then another 30-foot wide driveway. Street after street after street, we have been building these. And so it is, in our opinion, the city's opinion, it was unsafe for pedestrians. It's unattractive, but we don't get to say that. But you know, we took the issue that it is unsafe for pedestrians. And so again, part of this livable places thing was we tried very hard to do away with these double wide front driveways on 25-foot wide lots. And the NIMBYs didn't love it and the builders didn't like it at all. And so the compromise was you can no longer build those within 1,400 feet of a school, of a primary through secondary school, because you theoretically got kids walking to school and that's not a safe thing to be walking across those driveways. So we did get that instituted and that was a big step in the right direction. But that's a lot of what we're building in Houston in the infill development neighborhoods, because you've got to get the car in there.
Could I mention something that, just mention something before we move to the next topic? One of the things, we're very future oriented as neighborhood as we should be. And one of the things that's constantly spoken about is what happens when the cars go away. And they will either go away because of transit, because of the climate change, because of poverty. We won't be able to afford the cars, but also because the self-driving cars can be, you know, what Tesla's thinking about is storing cars somewhere away from the value of real estate and having it come and pick you up. And that's pretty easy. It's not driving the highways, just the car somewhere coming to pick you up. So what happens to the garages? Right? What happens to the garages? We hate those garages. Well, one of the things I noticed in COVID in Miami is that when we all started working at home, the people who did the best, had the best time were the ones who converted their garages to workplace. Like Liz and I converted our living room and dining room. We haven't had to get since because it was too useful to have a living room and dining room as workplace. But I have neighbors that have, you know, somewhat better buildings than that, but they happen to have 13-foot ceiling garage, a beautiful garage out of glass, and they actually have a stone driveway. And this lady was working there as if it were a loft in New York, you know, with 60-foot ceilings, etc. And the neighborhood gathered on her garage, on her driveway to listen to chamber music, etc., etc. And I had the aha moment that one of the things to do is to not eliminate garages, not even to eliminate front-loaded garages, but design them in a future-oriented way, in such a way as they become the workplace of the future mixed-use city. Do you see? Like we could do an AI Photoshop of this thing and just transform that into a storefront, just a storefront. Now, if you think, how possible is that? Do you realize the delightful British Muse that we all love and have dozens of photographs, the London Muse, beautiful London Muse that have dozens of photographs, they're all converted garages. Every one of them is a converted garage. And yet, cool stuff is happening on the first floor, etc. So I would like to posit to not always manage the garage, not always, but actually re-specify them to say that demonstrate in their future work loft that happens to temporarily need to fit a car. And that is what I call future proofing, instead of actually fighting this kind of thing. Because I know this is radical, I'm going to run CNU, but just let it steep into the start.
Yeah, so in order to do that, you have to do away with the parking requirements, which is 2 spaces per family unit. And if it were an office, we require probably 2 spaces. So it would require.
Well, yes, but no, I'm saying, you know, you don't work in the office yet. You still park outside.
Speak to the homeless.
No, wait, let's finish this. Garages are a huge thing and have tons of time. We have half an hour left. Don't we? Is it an hour and a quarter? Okay, and we're Latin Americans. Stop being so angry. Okay.
This is an example of what we were really trying to encourage, which is, these have, they have a common walk and they have a nice little common space and then.
Is this what you call courtyard?
No, because these are too big for one yard, but these are still three-story townhomes that probably are selling for, I'm guessing $500,000, depending on where they are. But they give you more
And
service.
they're simple, they're all, it's not an apartment building, it's all the way
They're all
up.
attached, but they're fee simple. And they share that common space. They provide more parking on the street. They're safer for pedestrians. This is, really, and in order, if you want to do this, we're giving you to setback, this is 5 feet from the property line. There's other incentives that we get to do that.
And to look at the social component, that's a way for people to interact with one another.
Yeah.
And I mean, they have activities, the kids playing, driveway, pretty safe. So.
Well, let's talk about one more thing because we're looking at something here. You do not have, you say that your drainage is surface drainage without inlets, something about that here. They actually use their streets in surface drainage, and that's kind of a problem. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so our streets are our drainage courses. Anybody remember Harvey? So after Harvey, we changed our drainage requirements. And the challenge with building these is that they have to each contain their own drainage system. So most of these built after Harvey would have a detention system
A French drain underneath.
underground to hold water. And that is incredibly expensive. It's about $83,000 today for a single family. It's for each one of these. And so
$83,000 for one,
for each
for
one.
each unit.
Yeah. And so it's incredibly expensive. It's also non-long-term. So I buy this one and I sell it to somebody who doesn't know I've got this. They don't maintain it in 10 years, 15 years, it's not doing its job. So, the question is, what's our long-term solution to this? And I know that people are still in the city of Houston trying to figure out what the long-term solution is. How do we make this, buildable and not, and makes Houston sustainable? And so, water's always a problem in Houston. Southwest Texas is always a problem moving into the right place. And so the detention is something that we haven't gotten our hands around yet. And smarter people than I are still working on it and trying to find a solution.
Okay, tell us about your homeless problem, your homeless situation.
I can start with the city.
Yeah.
So, the city of Houston has the civility ordinance, which prohibits people from sitting lay down or place their belongings on the sidewalks. It's something, again, come from the community, from 100 signatures from residents and 20% of signatures from property owners that represent 20% of the area. Now, that was approved, is enforced by the police. However, what the police does is what this ordinance does, it gives the authority to go to a homeless person surviving the street and find out what the issue is. If there is a mental issue, they can bring a social worker to take it to a place that person will get help. If it's a person who needs assistance with getting back on feet, same thing, they get a social worker and take them to a place where they can get assistance that the person needs. And that thing, they don't want to, they just need to walk away from the area. It's becoming very popular. We have the last 6 months, 3 more CBD ordinances in the city of Houston. Most of them surrounding us, downtown, midtown, and the surrounding areas in Houston.
Did you, I noticed a statistic here that in 2012, homelessness has gone down 63%. That's kind of unique, right? You've never heard that before?
We've
I've
been
never
really,
once heard that before. What did you do?
so we've been really successful. And I'm going to say it started 3 administrations ago. Mary East Parker was very sensitive to the issue of homelessness in Houston, and she got involved in the housing first theory of housing, which is let's not build shelters, let's not build temporary just places to warehouse people overnight. Let's actually build homes. The lack of homes is the problem that is causing homelessness. And so you're part of this housing first group of cities where we don't, as a city, spend money on shelters. So it's really a 3-pronged approach. One is that, while I would admit that the city of Houston doesn't coordinate with our counties on everything, The one thing that we are want that coordination with our counties on is our homeless initiatives, particularly Harris County and the city of Houston. And so between the two entities, the emphasis has always been on building homes, permanent supportive housing with the wraparound services necessary. So we've used millions and millions of dollars of COVID money to build homes. And I know there's someone in the audience somewhere from New Hope Housing, which is one of Houston's premier homeless home builders. They build everything from single room occupancy. So now they're doing actually homes for families, doing a terrific job providing homes. And we get people into a home and then give them the services they need to help them stay there. And what Abraham's talking about is if they're in an area that we have a civility ordinance, the services come to them, help get them off the street and get them into homes. And so through Mayor Parker and then through Mayor Turner and now through Mayor Whitmire, we've been really able to reduce homelessness. My understanding by the last count was there's less than 4,000 people who are considered homeless in Houston. And in 2017, we actually ended homeless veterans. That ended the problem of homeless veterans. So we're very proud. You can read any number of articles about it, and it's been a great program for us.
Okay. One thing that we just learned here, several things, that one of them is the centralized system. Everybody's cooperating. Miami also had very few homeless. And I find it very curious. Like, you ask me, where are they? We're such an appealing city with, a wonderful climate and everything. What is it that we do? And I've only received one answer that I've not explored, but I'd like other people to think about it. They say we have a highly coordinated system of dealing with it. I think there are other cities, and I can see there are all these sort of vested people trying to help, dozens and dozens and dozens. And somehow there's something dysfunctional about that. I don't know what's dysfunctional about it. And I don't know what's functional about the centralized system. But I know that two cities, mine and yours, are actually doing very well with the homeless because it's highly coordinated. If somebody wants to study that, let us know for the next time. I want to ask one question that's not here, and then I want to open it up. We still have 20 minutes. The one question is, there's a movement outside of new urbanism that I think should be brought in called everyday urbanism. And the book was written about 10 years ago, and it consisted of analyzing the barrios in Los Angeles and saying how basically there's a different aesthetic, there's a different society, etc. And one of the points they made is that not everybody is enchanted with hedges and grass and lawn. And that there are people like our people, where people, the Anglos are people of the park, the grass and, children dressed in white and shorts playing soccer. Okay, we're people of the plaza. Okay. In Miami, people gather. We have lots of parks, and the Latinos are all in parking lots because it's a plaza. So we just put the trees in the parking lots, and they're super happy. This thing is an Anglo scene, or at least culturally. What they were actually showing was not only a lot of pavement that were covered with, but a lot of chain link fences. And the chain link fences were used as actually shelves for retail. And it was kind of shocking how to middle class eyes, it really looked like a slum. Yeah. And they made the case that is the vitality that brings immigrants up. What do you have that's like that? Do you have communities that are like everyday urbanism?
Yeah, definitely. We have a super neighborhood called Gulfton. It's one of the most diverse community in Houston and consists of people from Central America, Africa, Middle East, a lot of refugees. So actually, when we consider the plaza, it would be the park. There is a park on the middle of that neighborhood where everybody gathers. If you're an immigrant and you love soccer, you're going to play some minimum work.
And it doesn't have to be, doesn't look like you don't trip.
No. It's just a low-income neighborhood.
Yeah.
And again, it's businesses surrounding the park, and then tons of apartment complexes in that area, and probably 14 elementary schools. So you will see people walking at 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. picking up their kids. You see people with their little cars selling ice cream.
Right. Okay. So let's talk about business. A lot of immigrants, if you leave them alone, will start business.
Oh, yeah.
And actually fund them. Do you have a very high hurdle for starting businesses, permitting and so forth?
No, but people are very creative.
You see what I'm saying? A lot of the stuff that's against us we get the hardware right. A lot of new urbanists get the hardware right, but the software is very onerous. Getting the permit for the restaurant, opening anything, selling an ice cream. Can you even sell a cookie without a license in Portland? I don't think so. I think you need a certified kitchen. You see what I'm saying? Like, do you need people alone to thrive? Is there something about that you should hear about?
Well, as part of the mayor's office, we have an office of new Americans. And that is their job, is to help them, help new Americans to navigate the process of what permits do they need if they're going to open the restaurant. We've done the city's done a nice job of building a number of kitchens in public spaces so that catering companies can get a start. They can come in and rent the kitchen out for a night and that type of thing. And so the city's been pretty progressive in that regard. But this office, Houston, unlike much of the South, doesn't care who your dad was and doesn't care where you came from. We've been welcoming, and this Office of New Americans is a real great way to anchor people into our community. They do a great job of introducing people to all the resources that can help them get a footing. And I think you've done work with them also in how we do community engagement and how we work with them from the planning department.
Just one very I was accused 2 years ago by a very intelligent African American from Atlanta. And he was, telling me about all the things we all know, like redlining. And then he accused me in a way that really hurt. He says, and you only design white space. I said, whoa. And I have to say very quickly, yeah, I only design white space, which is to say we here design middle-class space. We design middle-class space even for poor people. All our consultants, the consultants who give the square footage stuff, the consultants who tell us how retail works, the consultants who tell us how loans work, how anything works. Actually, our job is easier because the range of behavior of the middle class is quite narrow. And we all work within that range of behavior. Okay? The thing about the poor, I'm going to use that word, is that the range of behavior is enormous. It's actually better than ours. They behave where you could go and visit a family in a Latino community in which the little children are dressed in white and go to church once a day. And they grow roses. And you can also see people slaughtering pigs in the backyard. Okay? I mean it. That's Miami. We are completely inept at that range of behavior, just inept. And the thing about that range of behavior is that it happens in the same space. It's not like you slaughter the pigs there and you dress your girls in white here. No, it works as public space, has a huge range of behavior in the same place. And we haven't even brought that up in our discourse here. And that was one of the few accusations that I've heard that I have to say right away, yeah, I'm a designer of white space. Now I want to say I'm actually a designer of middle class space, not white space. But we are all designers of middle class space. And our consultants, all the ones that tell us how the market is going and to take transit, it all assumes middle class behavior. So I want to drop that bomb with you guys next. And I would like to see some everyday information with some t-shirts being sold on chain link fences next time.
Actually, CNU32 has a session about street life, and I'm going to talk about one example that's happening in Houston. That after the pandemic, how people from apartment complexes start selling food outside of their houses, and all the sides start selling clothes. And then it's not only the service is not only for the people who live there. People are coming to that area, driving to eat the food.
Yeah.
So it's quite amazing.
Yeah.
And it's in the middle of the street, of course. They don't have permits. But then the police also is very diverse, so they can move somewhere else as long as there's no complaint or crime going on.
We'd like to hear more from actually.
So it's interesting that this photo is up when we're having this conversation, because this is a common, this happens in Houston, and these types of lifestyles work together. Yeah.
It's the range, remember, it's when we're seeing the range of behavior, not the middle class lives here, the rich lives here, etc. We all know Bob Gibson gave us expert details on the public space for retail, but still we assume middle class activities. I'd like to see that, I'd like to design plazas that the same plaza works for everybody. Now, maybe at different times, but that the same plaza actually works for everybody. It's not what we do.
So, this is really a sad photograph of this house that we see is, gonna be gone. It may have already been gone. And it's an affordable home that somebody's lived in for, I don't know, 60+ years, maybe longer than that. And it has, architectural value, and we don't protect the architectural, we don't have any protections for architectural, historical structures except in historic districts. And this is what's happening in Houston. So this is the downside to redevelopment and infill development, is that we're losing these small homes. And now and I would bet that of those 3 new townhomes, these are probably 2 people living in each of them. So between 2018 and 2018, we had about a 36% increase in residential units inside our MPU, but we only had about a 10% increase in population because, as we talked earlier, the families moving out to the suburbs. This is probably either 2 young professionals or some empty nesters coming in these 3 homes. And so we're using the family aspect of our neighborhoods.
I'd like to, yeah.
Well, that's probably a duplex.
And so the cars have wildly different price points. Okay, this car is in the hundreds of dollars, that car is in thousands of dollars. I'd like to bring this slide back for another full discussion about what this represents.
Thank you very much, Margaret, Evelyn, and Chris. I want to